Now, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has embarked on a Europe-wide tour of schmoozing various world leaders in this part of the world in order to try and perhaps gain closer alignment with the European Union.
Yes, indeed. He's visited Germany, Poland and Sweden as part of a plan to reset relations with the European Union, despite having no plans to rejoin the single market.
Well, this comes as there's, of course, been that shock result in France's elections overnight as the left-wing alliance defies the polls, beating Marine Le Pen's hard-right National Rally and Emmanuel Macron's centrist coalition too.
Yes, indeed. So let's get the latest from the continent with former member of the European Parliament, Dr. Charles Tannock. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with the Labour government. David Lammy doing his tour of Europe, 3 key countries there. Lots of talk of closer cooperation with the European Union. Would that come with strings attached?
Well, obviously, the Labour Party in their manifesto, and Keir Starmer has repeatedly stated this, are not going to rejoin the single market or the customs union. I think that's regrettable. I'd be the first to support such a move, but that's not going to happen in this Parliament. But nevertheless, short of that, David Lammy has hit the ground running by his trips to Germany, Sweden and Poland. He's very keen on having very good bilateral relations with these governments because they're also NATO member states. Don't forget, Sweden joined NATO because of Russian aggression. And of course, on the 18th of July, the new British government in Blenheim is going to host the European Political Community meeting when all these countries will be coming to the United Kingdom to meet the new government and to talk about EU, European-wide issues, including Britain and those who aren't part of the European Union. And Joseph Borrell has invited the British government to attend the foreign ministers' meeting in October. So that will be a first for David Lammy to be a guest at the EU foreign ministers' meeting. So I think this is a genuine reset, a genuine attempt to get closer to the EU 27. Don't forget, David Lammy was always a strong, passionate Remainer. I think in his heart, he's still a strong pro-European, but he's obviously accepted. He's been elected to a government which have excluded rejoining the European Union and even the single market or customs union. But short of that, the number one priority for this government is a defence and security treaty with the EU. Don't forget that in November, US elections, if Trump becomes president, and NATO is undermined, Britain will be very exposed in terms of defence and security as a NATO member. And of course, it's in our interests, particularly with the Russian aggression against Ukraine, to have very strong ties militarily and in terms of security with our European partners.
Yes, it looks like while the UK will stay out of those sort of central EU institutions, we might well join up to new ones or become very, very close to those existing institutions. After all, the current Brexit trade and cooperation agreement is scheduled to be renegotiated or at least reassessed within the next 2 years. Do you think that there's a chance they'll sort of revive this old Theresa May idea of a Chequers-style deal, as it was known at the time, where the UK sort of agrees to have a similar regulatory outlook to the EU, although not exactly the same, but sort of follows and shadows those regulations while not technically being inside the single market?
Well, I mean, I would obviously hope so, because there's no doubt that Brexit has been an economic disaster and taking 4% of our GDP. And leaving the single market, I think, was a terrible mistake.
That 4% figure is a projection that still has not yet come to pass in reality.
Let's not argue about the figures, but nobody, even the most ardent Brexiteers, claim that the British economy has benefited from Brexit.
Well, we've grown quicker than other European nations, have we not?
Well, that depends on where you draw your baseline from. But there's no question that the UK economy, in my view, would have grown even more had it remained in the single market. So I don't think we want to relitigate the whole EU single market issue. The question that you've asked me to comment on is this new Labour government with a stunning majority going to try and have closer relations with the European Union? My view is it will. I believe this is a very genuine attempt by David Lammy, much more so than Rishi Sunak's government, Lord Cameron or James Cleverly. They kind of went to Europe, but clearly they were perceived as hostile to the project. David Lammy is perceived as friendly to the project, and I think that's very, very helpful. And there are lots of areas where the UK can cooperate. And I always advocated, in fact, in 2017, I wrote a paper on this, some kind of very strong defence and security arrangements, because Britain, along with France, remains the major military power.
You made an assumption. Sorry to interrupt. You made an assumption earlier that NATO would be undermined if Donald Trump gets back into power over in the United States, and therefore we need more cooperation with Europe on defence and security. I mean, what's that assumption based on? It appears that Donald Trump just wants people to cough up more cash.
Listen, Donald Trump, we all know, is highly unpredictable, but which is not great in security and defence terms. So I don't know for sure he's going to do anything on NATO. All I can say is that in the past he has alluded to the fact that if countries, for instance, don't spend their 2%, which is the target, that the US won't come to their defense. So that alone should cause shivers down the backs of those who fear, an invasion by Russia under Putin. So it is an assumption, but we can't afford to take any risks when it comes to defense of the realm and security cooperation. So I would strongly support moves to get closer to the European Union and its structures in the areas of defence and security. And I even advocated that the United Kingdom be given observer status at the Political and Security Committee of the EU back in 2016 in my paper.
Let's watch this space. Charles Tannock, former MEP. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but thank you so much for joining us